This Saturday episode of New Politics was released on the 23rd of May, 2026, and produced on the lands of the Wongal and Gadigal people.
There's been a concocted backlash against the Albanese government over the budget. It's still going on over a week later. It's likely to keep going on for a few more months. And of course, it's coming from the usual suspects: property investors, venture capitalists, and big business. I'm Eddie Djokovic.
I'm David Lewis. All of this is coming up in this big episode of New Politics.
And if you're listening in and haven't subscribed to our website at New Politics, you're missing out on half of what we do. There's regular articles and analysis of this strange world of politics. It's all free, and you can subscribe at newpolitics.com.au. And of course, if you do want to support us, it's just $5 per month at Patreon and Substack, and all of this is a good way to support independent journalism.
A week on from the federal budget, and the government cannot escape the anger. Small business owners continue to lash Labor over changes to taxes. They're now venting their frustrations in a wave of AI-generated memes, showing the Prime Minister as a part owner taking part in things like Pilates and construction due to the higher tax rates. They're posting the pictures alongside lines like, "Meet our new business partner, Albo. He now owns 47% of the company." It comes as business owners fork out thousands on accountants and lawyers just to help them understand what has changed.
The debate over the 2026 budget is continuing, and a lot of the focus has been on the broken promise on the changes to negative gearing and capital gains tax. And the Prime Minister had consistently ruled out changes on these measures. Here he is just before the 2025 federal election.
Can you rule out any changes to negative gearing and capital gains tax?
Yes. How hard is it for the 50th time?
Anthony Albanese would have ruled it out at least 50 times and a few more 100 times since he was the leader of the Labor Party in 2019. And David, I think that there's two ways of looking at this: that leaders should never break a promise, never, ever, ever, ever break a promise, even though there's overwhelming evidence that's against them, or they can look at that overwhelming evidence, make the change, and then use that to their advantage. And when the evidence is just so overwhelming, that's what a leader should do. Make the change that benefits people, benefits society, and benefits the economy. But the issue here is that the vested and powerful interests that are opposed to these changes, and that's real estate agencies, property developers, property investors, venture capitalists, banks, media proprietors such as Seven West Media and News Corporation, and then on top of that, there's the Liberal Party. Well, they've all started ramping up the campaign against the Labor government. So first of all, they're looking at this idea of the broken promise, and then on young people are going to miss out on becoming investors. They're pushing this idea that venture capital is going to head overseas. We are no longer an aspirational society and all that sort of stuff. So their response has been quite predictable, and there's also been a lot of push polling to suggest that 67% of the electorate thinks that the budget is bad for Australia, without outlining why this would actually be the case. So it just seems like the fallout from this budget is being perpetuated by the mainstream media, because most of these proprietors and their benefactors are the ones that will be missing out.
It's funny that and I suppose it's not, but it's notable that they're focusing on cuts to capital gains tax or increases to capital gains tax and negative gearing, rather than focusing on cuts to the NDIS, an unworkable AUKUS bill, increased defence spending with no real justification of what's going on. It's funny how it's the thing that affects their hip pocket, and this is where Ben Chifley was absolutely right. The first nerve that people are worried about is the hip pocket nerve, meaning the wallet in the back pocket. And it's the usual suspects too. And the solution is, if you're poor, just go and buy a house. We whinge at children staying at home till they're late 20s and 30s, but then also say they want to enter the property market, stay at home more, stay at home longer and save up for a deposit, given that a lot of deposits are beyond the scope of saving up for in a short period or in a relatively reasonable period of time. I really think that the right actually like the budget, except for this part, which affects them. Suddenly, they had the property magnate who was 28 or something and had 17 properties. Now, he might have been like a friend of mine I went to school with who bought a fibro house in Dubbo when she was 17 and had to jump through all kinds of hoops to get what was then a large mortgage, but by today's standard is a laughably small mortgage. She now owns quite a few properties. She won't tell me how many. And that's okay. It's none of my business. But she did literally start from nothing and scraped her way through to earning a lot. You wonder, though, how many of the property people that they're interviewing didn't start from nothing. And again, that's okay. You can't choose the circumstances of your birth, but you should acknowledge when the circumstances of your birth give you an advantage that other people mightn't have. And a lot of the solution, which is the underlying for a lot of the people howling against this, is be born to rich parents. If you've got that skill, that's fantastic. Unfortunately, for most people, they don't have that skill. Loving parents, sure. Great parents, absolutely. But rich, maybe not.
Or maybe young people should be moving to Dubbo or Lightning Ridge, places like that, back of Bourke. Why not?
Yeah. Brewarrina and Walgett and Narromine and Trangie, and the housing is fairly cheap there. Port Macquarie's taken off, apparently, with a lot more younger people moving there because it was outside the Sydney zone and the houses were a bit more affordable, and that's great.
Yeah, so the opportunities are there if you want to live in a town of 3 or 4 people. So that's what you're saying.
Very pretty town with a lot of heritage buildings. Nothing else, but a great little town.
But the other thing that I've noticed about this backlash that's been happening this week, and it just seems to be more than what you usually get, but it's been very coordinated, it's been incredibly aggressive, and I think this is what happens when you attack vested interests. Discretionary trust, there's going to be a tax on that, 30% tax, so they're treated exactly in the same way as companies are, and that's the rort that should have been removed a long time ago. Property, tax on capital, so trusts, property, capital. That's the wealth class in a nutshell, and pretty much. And it's going to be the wealth class that is going to keep pushing these effects all the way up until the next election. So that's the conservative media, property industry, and then the Liberal Party as well. And there was that one poll that I talked about before that came out this week suggesting that 67% of Australians think that this budget is bad. And then you're thinking, well, how do people actually make this assessment? Do they read the budget papers or who's actually shaping this narrative? And my feeling is it's either push polling or it's a made up number, because essentially this budget overall, it doesn't seem to be any better or worse than previous budgets. And if anything, it's probably a better budget than previous budgets.
As we said, was it last week or the week before, that it's making incremental moves in the right way. It's not perfect. It's not the best budget that we'll ever see in our lifetime, but it is moving in the right direction. We've got to fix the NDIS problem. We've got to cut our defence spending and our AUKUS spending in major ways. But starting to look at maybe adjusting perhaps negative gearing and removing the commodification of housing is a good thing. Is it as good a thing as not cutting defence? That's another debate for another time, and that's something that we all should think about. But is it a bad budget? Not compared to, say, any of Scott Morrison's, none of which passed the Senate. That's how bad they were. I think one of Frydenberg's got through. None of Hockey's got through, even after his triumphant cigar which he went and just cut everything. It was a horror budget. It made no economic sense. And there him and Matthias Cormann smoking a cigar in the courtyard of Parliament House, and then didn't get through anyway. So this one will get through. There may be adjustments. The Greens may insist on some changes before they vote. Fine. One Nation may use its numbers to try and force some changes through. That's how Parliament works. But I think it will pass. I don't think it will be remembered as one of the greatest budgets that we've had, but I think it may be seen in a couple of years' time as the one that started to change things.
It's also been interesting to see the way that the coalition has really ramped up Labor's housing reforms, they're pushing out this message that it's an assault on aspiration, and even suggested that it's this was Tim Wilson, the shadow treasurer. He suggested that it's an attack on the lemonade stalls of the future, and it took me a while to work out what he actually meant by that. But I guess if you're desperate, you'll say pretty much anything to get the attention. And this idea of aspiration, that's the rhetoric from the Howard era. And I just think that the electorate has moved on since that time. And the Liberal Party is also saying that this is all class warfare. It's anti-small business, it's anti-investment, it's anti-venture capital. It's almost like it's anti-everything. I've just got a feeling that Hanrahan might be out there advising the Liberal Party about all this doom and gloom. But a lot of this, so immediately after the budget, you can see that a lot of this is politics as usual pretty much. But to be ramping it up in this way suggests that the Liberal Party feels that it can latch onto something here. And Tim Wilson is the guy who gave us that stupid franking credits misinformation or disinformation campaign a few years ago. I think that sort of stuff can work. I absolutely hate it, but I think that sort of stuff can work when you're actually in government. But it's just a lot more difficult to push through with these sort of stupid campaigns when you're sitting in opposition.
The only thing preventing Tim Wilson from being the stupidest member of the Liberal Party is that Angus Taylor is the leader. He's not a terribly intelligent, he's not terribly subtle. You couldn't trust him as far as you could kick him. None of his parliamentary colleagues like him. He scraped back into his seat, and he won't win the next election. And the more noise he makes, the worse it'll be for him. Instead of going around and being a good local member, he's doing exactly what he did last time, trying to make a fool of himself on the national stage, thinking that this is somehow cachet. And he just isn't a good member of parliament and should never have been pre-selected. And I think at heart he knows that, which is why he's trying so hard to prove that he is a good member of parliament. No, I really am. Look at me, I deserve to be on the national stage. Yeah, thanks, Tim. Sit down with the kids. Go back to the kids' table, Tim. The adults are speaking. And that's how it feels.
This is New Politics, independent analysis of Australian and international politics. For more free articles and analysis, join us at newpolitics.com.au.
I think that generally, you alluded to this before, but I think that what we're seeing at the moment is the start of this ideological battle about the future of the Australian economy itself. And I think generally within the community, I think there is a better understanding about the way that this has been building up over the past 40 years or so. And I hate using that term winners and losers, but essentially that's what we're seeing. You're getting a lot of the people that have done really, really, really well. And I'm not suggesting that they've done anything nefarious or anything wrong or anything like that. It's just that's what the tax system was. That's how it has been set up, that you can set up all of these people to make a shitload of money out of property investments or whatever the case might be, but they've used the tax system in the way that it was set up. So you can't do anything about that except for change the tax system.
It advantaged the already advantaged.
Well, that's right, but the only thing you can really do is change that system. So it's just that you're getting a new group of people, and that's millennials and Gen Z and beyond that, you're getting a whole new group of people who are really going to miss out and are missing out at the moment. And politically, well, it's not just going to be a case where all of those groups of people are going to say, oh, that's our lot in life, can't do much about that, we'll just continue. Politically, they're going to vote for the policies that will support them in the same way as you had all of those people who are in a strong position today voted for all of those Howard policies in the 1990s and the 2000s, and the Labor government was between 2007 and 2013. They weren't courageous enough to make those changes. So, yeah, these people they're not going to vote for the things that the coalition is offering because that's not in their favour. And you can't keep pushing deregulation or privatisation or lower taxes on capital and property-driven growth. You can't keep pushing that as a political party if there's little or no support for it within a substantial part of the electorate. And it's not just a Liberal Party that needs to take note of this. It goes for the Labor Party and the Labor government as well. There's no point in pursuing those policies if the support for those sort of policies is diminishing and they're no longer relevant.
Exactly. It goes back to that existential crisis that all the parties are going through, particularly the major ones. Can philosophy that was formed in the 19th century still be relevant today? Can a system built on a particular type of liberal and conservative success still work in a system that's totally different to what our great-grandfathers and great-grandmothers had to live through? And even if we look, both parties reformed in the 1980s. That's still 40 years ago. I'll just give everyone a second to go and lie down who remembers it. But we're seeing the cracks in the old foundations as the system is starting to crumble. I think John Birmingham suggested that this was the second last budget reply by a Liberal leader ever. And I think he's probably right, that the next opposition leader won't come from the Liberal Party.
The other narrative that was being pushed during the week is that narrative about this budget being one of the biggest political gambles of the Albanese government. And I had to have a good chuckle about that because Anthony Albanese is one of the most cautious prime ministers that we've ever seen. And he's not really a gambling man, although he's quite happy to keep the gambling industry alive and well and kicking. But the point is that the Prime Minister, he will not implement anything unless it's been market tested to an inch of its life. And when they talk about a big political gamble, I think they're referring to negative gearing and the idea of that broken promise. But the Albanese government actually does more focus group testing and market research than any other government before it. And it's even surpassed the Morrison government. And it would know that housing is a massive issue in the electorate. And you don't need to do your focus group testing and market research to understand that. Everyone realises that, but they've done their market research and focus group testing and it realised that it had to do something and it had to do something drastic about it. So I think that they're on relatively safe grounds here. But the media, well, because of their vested interests and all that sort of stuff, they're the ones that are making a big noise about it. But they also did make that big song and dance about Angus Taylor now being the preferred Prime Minister in opinion polls. And that is about the most useless metric that you can get, David. We've talked about this many times before. It didn't say Paul Keating or John Howard or Kevin Rudd or Bill Shorten. They were all preferred Prime Ministers but ended up losing elections. And I think, to be honest, it's probably a made-up figure anyway. But generally it's a week after the budget. There's something quite different about this budget. Normally they're announced and they disappear after a few days, but this one has strongly lingered on for most of this week. It's probably going to continue for a short while. They'll probably drag it out for as long as possible. And it is the wealth class that is making all the noise. But ultimately, I don't think it will make that much of a difference. The electorate has moved on. It's 2026. It's not 1996. The electorate has changed. The country has changed. So has the economy. This is rich, entitled people squealing about their fortunes that are going to be crumbling ever so slightly. And I just think that when the entire economic model just seems so unsustainable, it's just not going to get the attention that they think that they'll get.
Yeah, the young or the first home buyers who can never get into a house, no matter how many smashed avocado toasts they eat. Generational passing down not only of wealth but of economic disadvantage. The destructive notion that we need 3 to 5% unemployment to keep the economy because it keeps wages down, which is just absolutely insane. If you've got a Lamborghini, you don't take one of the cylinders out of your V12 because it uses less petrol. The notion that education, a liberal education, whether in science or arts, is for the wealthy, not for everybody, and that university degrees that don't lead straight into an obvious job are somehow worth less than those that do, as if thinking and being able to think isn't a worthy and worthwhile attribute in a modern society or in any society. We have a lot of issues. We have a tax system that's built upside down. My suggestion would be to next get rid of the GST. They won't do that. In fact, to be fair, in a total tax restructure, unfortunately, that's probably one of the last things you'd have to get rid of as you replaced its inefficient structures with better things. But hopefully this budget is the first in a series of 3 or 4 that make all these changes and put Australia back onto the better prosperity it should have, not the sort of half prosperity that is good enough.
That's it for this episode of New Politics. Thanks for listening in. And if you value independent journalism without the influence of corporate backing, join New Politics at newpolitics.com.au and support us directly. It's just $5 per month, and we always try to keep it very simple. If you like what we do, please send some support our way. It keeps our commitment to independent journalism ticking along. I'm Eddie Djokovic. Thanks for listening in, and it's goodbye to our listeners.
I'm David Lewis. We'll see you next time.